We meet on this country in the spirit of reconciliation. As we come together today, we acknowledge the rich history of this land and offer recognition and respect for the custodians who have lived here continuously for many centuries. We acknowledge elders of the past who have created the history, those who are with us in the present to lead us forward, and the elders and leaders who will guide us in the future. For all embody the memories, traditions and cultures that are vital to preserving connections to this land. We acknowledge and offer greetings to First Nations people from everywhere in Australia, to those on country bounded by sea, to those from the Red Interior, to those who dwell amongst magnificent forests, and to the many who live in cities across this land. Central Queensland University, Australia, acknowledges the significance and strength of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island cultures and their place in the expression of an inclusive national society. Thank you for coming together today on Country.
Hi everybody, welcome to the what is our third Scholarship of Tertiary Teaching Conference, and I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands in which we live, work and learn, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and future. My name is Celeste Lawson and I am the chair of the academic board here at Central Queensland University, and I'm your host for this conference. I'm very proud to be here today and to be the host for this conference. This is the third time we've held this conference, this virtual tertiary teaching conference, and I think it's even more meaningful for us this year. 2020, what a year. And it's been something that we are all learning to adapt to a new normal, a new global normal, as well as normal in our tertiary sector. This conference, I think, has new significance for us. We have embraced online teaching in the last couple of years, but this year, everyone has been forced into this new way of thinking, this new space. And for some, it's been a painful transition. For many of us, it's still a painful transition in terms of budgets, moving online, and even for some of us, maintaining employment. So it's been a very challenging year for us, 2020. And I think that this conference and some of the presentations that you will see during this conference will reflect that changing world in which we are living. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Our first official opening is at 9:15 with our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, Professor Helen Huntley. But before I do that, I just want to just take a couple of minutes to do some basic housekeeping for everybody. A little reminder, this conference is free. We made a conscious decision to allow registrations to everybody for this conference and not charge a registration fee to access the conference. We've done that deliberately because at CQU our values are inclusiveness and can-do, and it is important for us to be able to share our scholarship and share our practice, and we wanted to make that available for everyone. With that in mind, can I ask people to please respect the intent of the conference? Now I know that you will, but it is all about professionalism and collegiality. So there will be plenty of opportunities for you to interact and to meet your fellow delegates. We have a tea room that you'll be able to go in and network with. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to ask questions during the sessions. Just bear that in mind, that we want to try and keep this conference as positive and as professional as possible. The sessions will run to time. We are very strict on time. That is so that you can plan your day. It's a long time to sit in front of a camera with the headphones on. So we want to make sure that the sessions run exactly to time. So please be courteous and dial into the session that you want to attend 2 minutes beforehand so that it will start exactly on time. And that way you know that the sessions will start on time, and everyone else who is coming to your session will know that it's starting on time. You'll be able to jump in and jump out. That's totally fine. We expect people to be able to jump in and jump out and go between sessions. Each theme has its own room, its own Zoom room. You'll see that on the program. So if you do want to change sessions, you just need to dial out and dial into the other Zoom room. Those Zoom addresses will stay the same throughout the conference. So per room, there are 4 rooms plus this webinar for the keynote speakers. All sessions will be recorded, so if you don't have, you can't get to 2 sessions, they're on at the same time, don't worry, all of the sessions will be recorded and you'll be able to access those recordings at a later date once we've processed the videos. It's also very important for us to evaluate the conference. We're all academics, we love a good evaluation. So when the evaluation link comes through, can you please take the time, it really does help, and click the link and evaluate the session that you've been in, just for our own edification and to improve the conference in ongoing iterations of it. There, at last count, there were 387 delegates registered to attend the conference, which is just wonderful, and it just reinforces to me how important this type of conference is, and how people are wanting to embrace this new normal, this online way of thinking. For some of us, of course, it's not so new, but for others, this has been quite a year. There are 72 presentations throughout the 2 days, and so there's quite a lot and a diverse amount of presenters and presentations from 20+ universities. So there's a broad representation of experiences that you're going to see across these next 2 days. We've grouped presentations into the 5 themes. You will have seen from the program those 5 themes, so I won't go into those details. You'll see those and you'll be able to judge who you would like to see, and based on that program. This webinar room will have the official opening from Helen Huntley at 9:15. This room will also host the keynote presentations. We have 2 keynote presentations. Professor Kate Ames from CQ University, about hyperflexibility and the new way of thinking of online learning, and Michael Sankey tomorrow at lunchtime, again, that new way of thinking, that distance design learning. I would like to just take a little second to indulge, if I may, and I would like to thank all of you for coming and participating in this conference. We can't do it without your support. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedules. For many of you, it will be a very busy time of year. There's no good time of year for teaching scholars. We already know that. So it is really appreciated that you have taken the time out to join this conference and to help share your practice and to engage in scholarship of others. I'd also like to thank those people who are presenting at the conference and the effort that it goes to prepare a paper to present at the conference. Thank you very much. And I would like to also thank everyone who has submitted an abstract for this conference, even those abstracts that were not accepted. Thank you very much for taking the time to submit your abstracts. It's really heartening to see how many people are willing to share their practice and get their message out. So thank you very much for your participation. I would also like to thank the organising team, the facilitators who you will see at your various sessions. We have 4 concurrent sessions, and each one of those sessions has a facilitator. So we've got quite a few facilitators throughout the next 2 days. Thank you to those facilitators for your time. Thank you to the reviewers for reviewing the abstracts and selecting the presentations that we are all going to see in the next couple of days. And I'd like to also thank our IT support and our support staff, the staff behind the scenes who are helping to make this conference a success. I'd also particularly like to acknowledge Cherie Roy, who is the conference convener and who has done a lot of work behind the scenes to get this up and running. So thank you to Cherie. Conferences like this are really important, and we are likely to see more and more of them as we start to settle into our new normal, our new way of thinking, our new way of teaching. So it's important for us to really embrace this way of reflecting and active scholarship of our teaching and our tertiary teaching. It's the way of the future. Some things we're going to have to rethink and relearn, and it's conferences like this that allow us to see what's happening around the place and be able to pick up on some lessons that we can apply in our own teaching. I have seen, I know probably you're all like me, get those emails in your inbox saying this conference is now all online, this conference is now all online, and it is something that we are going to see a lot more of, and so we can be thankful, I think, that we are already in a place where we can function and operate and teach and convert and transition to our online teaching to best cope with this new world that we find ourselves in. That's all I really wanted to say to welcome you this morning. You will be able to, I can see a few of you on the chat saying hello. You'll be able to chat. The chat's also, by the way, also going to be recorded, so you'll be able to see the chat. So keep it professional. That's pretty much all I want to say. We'll have probably 3 minutes before the 9:15 session kicks off. So sit tight, maybe make yourself another cup of tea, and Helen Huntley will join us at 9:15. Once again, thank you everybody for your participation, and here's to an excellent conference.
So there we go, Celeste. We did an informal poll in the chat, and I think we've got Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Townsville, Ballarat. We've got Malaysia, but I think my favourite response is all the people from Melbourne who said lockdown with a little smiley, with a little sad face. So, you know, we feel for you in Melbourne, I'm sure.
Whenever Helen is ready.
Thanks, Cherie. Thanks, everybody. Welcome, and thanks, Celeste, for that your warm introduction to Central Queensland Uni and to our Scholarship of Tertiary Teaching Conference. My name is Helen Huntley, and as Celeste has already indicated, I'm the Vice President Academic at Central Queensland University. I'm really honoured to be able to present a short keynote for you this morning. But first of all, I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which each of us meet today. I'm also paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge any Indigenous colleagues present at this conference today. Before I start, I think it's really important to note that in Central Queensland University's spiritual home, which is Rockhampton in Central Queensland, our university has been learning, educating and researching for just over 50 years, which sounds like quite a significant time in our beautiful state. We are really grateful at Central Queensland Uni in Rocky to share this beautiful land with the Durrumbal people, who have been the traditional owners and themselves learning, educating and researching, but not for just over 50 years, but for just over 60,000 years. So it's really humbling to be able to continue to share this land. And in fact, Central Queensland University is honoured to share the lands with our traditional owners across our vast footprint, which spans all mainland states in this beautiful country of ours. In starting this short address, I'd really like to extend my thanks. Celeste has already done this, but a special appreciation to the organising committee for your foresight, who would have thought that when we initiated this online conference just a couple of years ago, that this year it would be the only way for a conference to be delivered. So well done, team, for keeping ahead of the pack. I really want to pay special significant acknowledgement to Celeste. Celeste is not just a really long-term colleague of mine. We worked in the same school for more years than either of us want to remember. Celeste is also the chair of our academic board. And it was Celeste and a small team of people who put their heads together a few years ago to actually get this conference up and running. So Celeste, you've acknowledged everyone, but I would also like to acknowledge you. I'd also like to acknowledge someone who needs no introduction, and that's my good friend and colleague, Professor Kate Ames. Kate's the director of our Learning Design and Innovation Directorate at Central Queensland University. And I know that with your input and that of your team, you have not just supported this high quality conference, and I'll talk a little bit about this later on, but really pushed forward the agenda of quality learning and teaching and scholarship of learning and teaching at our university. So thank you, Kate and team. I'm going to talk a bit more about this in my speech, but I would also like to acknowledge publicly every single one of my academic colleagues at Central Queensland University. I can't tell you the term, because we're taping this session, that I've actually coined for 2020 COVID in universities, but it's safe to say that our academics, I always knew you would, have completely risen to the challenge, not whinging and whining about what they have to do, but actually staying completely student focused and delivering in spades. I especially would like to acknowledge my 65 TED, a tertiary education division, colleagues in Melbourne. As Michael has said, we absolutely feel for you. We know what we probably don't know what you're going through, but we can only imagine. And I hope that you enjoy today's conference program and take yourself a little bit out of pretend you're not in lockdown just for that short amount of time. Finally, and most importantly, thank you, our contributors. Thank you for ensuring that we have a quality program. Excellent. But more for your ongoing interest in and dedication to quality learning and teaching and scholarship at all educational levels. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic couple of days. My speech is not going to go too long, hopefully, but it does. I am looking at a couple of themes today, given the themes that are in the for this conference and the actual theme of the whole conference itself. I wanted to start to talk to you a little bit about the importance of educators and of education. Now, I know that you don't need any convincing about those two important aspects of our work, otherwise you wouldn't even be here for this conference. My primary education, some of you know, was at a one-teacher rural school in Queensland. The school had a maximum enrolment of 21 when I think I was in grade 7, and that was the biggest the school has ever been. A lot of those 21 were actually my cousins, so maybe that doesn't count. In my 7 years at primary school, I had two absolutely amazing teachers whose learning and teaching practices would, in contemporary educational practice, be considered best practice. I probably didn't recognise that then, but on reflection and with the knowledge that I have now, after a 40-something year career in education at 3 different levels, their teaching practice was actually characterised by all of the things that we teach in our teacher education degrees, and we certainly encourage and develop professionally in our university teaching workforce. They had a strong focus on the individual student. You might say, well, there was only 21, so that wasn't too hard. But they knew each of us. They knew how we learnt and how we wanted to and needed to learn. They had a big focus on collaborative learning. Now, there was lots of group work, and what I would reflect on today as co-construction of knowledge and learning. But at the time, it was just having a good time with your friends and your cousins, but we actually learned. They were really invested in peer learning, and I guess that's almost compulsory when you're teaching every single one in the school. They scaffolded our learning. There was obviously multi-age and multi-ability, not just in one room, but that was the whole school. And they involved our families. Probably that was really significant. I think in those days, and they had both had a strong focus on experiential learning. Now, I didn't know what experiential learning was back in primary school, but the one example that I reflect on, and there were dozens, there were probably hundreds, was I think I was probably in about grade 5 or 6, and Mr. Johnson was my teacher then. Mr. Johnson clearly identified that there were students across the whole year levels at the school, but particularly in the upper school, who were struggling with particular skills, literacy, numeracy, communication. We didn't have computers, but there was other forms of technology, obviously, then. So what he did was he used the whole school, especially the upper school, the older kids, and the parents, and we set up a tuck shop at the school. Now, we were 40 minutes drive from town, 40 minutes drive from the bakery and the places that you could buy the bits and pieces. But again, on reflection, it was just brilliant because Mr. Johnson identified the weaknesses in our learning and gave us those sort of jobs. So taught us how to do stuff and then gave us particular jobs. So the student who was really shy and struggled with communication, I remember that student was in charge of liaising with parents and ringing through the orders like the week before. And that was the old ring, 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 hello, I won't tell you how old I was, blah, 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 can we have? So that was brilliant. The student who was struggling with maths, then that person, you might say this is counterintuitive, but we all supported each other and he supported us. The person who wasn't too great at maths looked after the till and looked after the, giving out the change and was overseeing each of us doing that. The person who struggled with literacy was in charge of writing up the menus and writing the letters home to the parents, etc., and the thank you letters, whatever. Absolutely flaming brilliant. And the bonus was, for those of us who lived in the bush and didn't actually get to eat what we'd call junk food in those days, every second week or every month, the parents were rostered, they'd go into town bright and early on that Friday morning, bring the stuff back, put it in the pot. We got to eat cream buns and sausage rolls and chips, and probably nutrition was the only thing was our downfall on those Fridays. But it was absolutely brilliant, and we learned so much. We learned with each other, we learned from each other, and we learned life skills that sort of took us forward. So and undoubtedly, I loved school. I loved those 7 years at primary school. And perhaps even subconsciously in those mid-60s, 1960s, at this tiny little one-teacher school, the educational practices of Phil Christ and John Johnson had an indelible and lifelong effect on me. And all it took was an amazing health and phys ed teacher in secondary school when I was in grade 8 and 9, and my professional life was set in motion. I knew what I wanted to do. So I left the farm, something not many rural kids did in those days, especially girls, and had to move to the big smoke. There was no Central Queensland Uni at that stage, and set about my goal of changing the lives of children one lesson at a time. And after a career exclusively in education spanning over 40 years, I maintained my love of learning and teaching and my commitment to the provision of quality education, with a focus on regional, rural and remote learners. I had a chance to move to lots of different places. My heart has always been in the bush, and I think that's where we and I can make the most difference. So in effect, the decisions that I make as Provost, or my new title, Vice President Academic, haven't quite got used to that yet, unashamedly have had their foundations in quality learning and teaching. And that's why conferences and opportunities such as these are absolutely vital. More recently, my commitment to learning and teaching has expanded somewhat to include advocacy for the scholarship of learning and teaching, and that's my second theme today. I must admit that my initial foray into scholarship of learning and teaching, I had TEXA at the back of my mind, and those of you who are in the conference today who look after or have oversight of the Higher Education Standards Framework monitored by TEXA will know what I'm talking about. So TEXA was at the back of my mind, but firmly at the front was a desire to ensure that CQU students were taught by educators who were supported to provide the best learning and teaching practices in the sector. Now, some of you may know, in the middle of my career, I spent 10 years, almost 10 years, as Dean of Education and then Education in the Arts. And especially as Dean of Education and our arts colleagues, I was blessed to work with educators and a lot of teacher educators who were actually educators by trade and had qualifications in learning and teaching. But when I was promoted to Provost, I soon realised that not every academic had a pedagogical background and that it was completely unfair to expect them to be expert educators without providing them with opportunities to learn. And I often think about my allied health academic colleagues who are absolutely brilliant clinicians and practitioners and absolutely dedicated to the education of their students, their health students, and yet we actually put them in front of a class traditionally, and it's like getting the clipboard and the key to the executive washroom and saying, off you go, folks, thank you, welcome to the university. Oh, by the way, just remember that there are student evaluations at the end of term and we report through a traffic light system, and just remember no reds, please. A couple of ambers are okay, but we like it in the green, and sort of leave it at that. So at CPU, we don't do that now, but I think in the early days, there wasn't a lot of thought about how we bring an expert practitioner from their environment, their work environment, we plonk them into a university and then we expect them to get green lights. Not fair, and I know we've moved a long way. So we have moved a long way, but I'd say CPU, like a lot of universities, we still have a way to go, but we're continually working on the provision of high quality, pre-planned and just-in-time student-focused PD for our educators. And I would suggest that conferences such as these showcase some of that expertise. So that provision of PD is also supported by an institutional philosophy that truly values education and scholarly activity. And it's characterised by one of the most important things, I think, for me, was that we have a promotional process that values educators. Yes, research and service and all other aspects of contribution to university operations and life is vital, but so too is the valuing of quality learning and teaching and recognising that. So I'm so proud that one of the legacies that I will leave at this university is that you can achieve promotions throughout your career, and you can actually attain the title of professor at this university based on your learning and teaching practice as a teaching scholar. You don't have to be, yeah, Michael, it is worth celebrating. You don't have to be the person who teaches for a while and then realises you're not going to get promoted unless you get lots of publications, citations, oleations and grant money. And so you move to research. You can do both. Scholarship is research, high quality research of learning and teaching practices. And I'm so proud that we already have teaching scholar professors at this university, and I know we will have so many more in the future. The other characteristic of the university, and I'd really like to think that this was something that I had a big hand in, was the development of our Learning Design and Innovation Directorate. So under Kate's leadership, we have a team, admittedly small, that actually really values, promotes, acknowledges and rewards quality, contemporary, student-focused learning and teaching practice. Kate took the reins not too long ago. Well, actually, Kate developed the directorate. We didn't have a directorate this time last year. And since, with Kate's stewardship, CPU has never provided so much high-quality, pedagogically focused professional development to our educators. Kate's team are very inclusive of our vet educators. Most of you would know that we are proudly dual sector, the only dual sector university in Queensland. And many of our vet teachers haven't had the benefit of formal development or training or education in learning and teaching. and our vet educators especially have really responded positively, and they truly value the opportunities that Kate's team has provided. So that's been a game changer at our university. And never before was this collaborative and inclusive approach to educational support more evident or more important than this year, when CQU, like all other Australian institutions and probably education institutions worldwide, was hit by what this conference has creatively called the virus crisis. Now, I had been watching the wet market-inspired global health situation since late January, coming back from leave, looking at the news, looking at the worldwide, when just those little stories started to bubble through. And with my clearly non-medical background, I honestly thought that this coronavirus would turn out to be little more than a severe flu. Well, how wrong I was, and how quickly the situation escalated, until I found myself in an executive meeting discussing with the Vice-Chancellor not whether to, but when to move CQU learning and teaching fully online, or as we like to call it, in the fewest number of letters possible for the many emails that were going backwards and forwards, all online. But in typical form, when I gathered the deans together at the end of the second week of term 1, mid-March, to say, hey guys, we're going all online from Monday. They actually took it all in their stride, and together we commenced planning in earnest. Many of you may not know that Celeste is an expert in crisis communications, so we said, hey Celeste, you're not doing much. Can you please come and join our little crew to help us through? And I have to say, it was absolutely brilliant to have Celeste's background knowledge in there, also to have Kate's military training, and of course a heap of deans who knew their stuff. And together I think we were a pretty formidable team. And we met daily. I think we got to know each other pretty well. There's no doubt that coronavirus has had an absolutely devastating impact on our sector. In fact, nearly all sectors of society globally. It has single-handedly initiated the worst possible financial crisis that the tertiary education sector has ever experienced. And we're not just experiencing that now, that's going to be felt for many, many years to come. But if I'm to look, and notwithstanding the current financial situation, if I'm to look to the positive and live up to my reputation as the Pollyanna of the executive team, I have to say that coronavirus has also prompted some absolutely amazing creativity and innovation, and certainly a sense of camaraderie and teamwork at our university. CQU was no doubt better placed than most to go all online in a short period of time. We have a very mature learning management system, Moodle, where all units have a presence. Even for our vet colleagues or our allied health courses where there's no online learning, it was face-to-face, every course has a Moodle presence. And at the time of all online flipping the switch, 92% of our courses were already being taught online or in mixed mode. So there was only a handful of the higher ed of our degree courses that really had to be flipped completely. And then there was our vocational. We had the trades, the plumbing trades, the carpentry trades. And we were saying, we need you to front end the theory, if you like, and then we'll work towards what we can do with the practical as the events rolled out. So we actually had a handful of higher ed courses and all of our vet courses, and we were basically saying, overnight, we would like you to, we will support you, but we need you to be able to structure and plan for a completely online cohort. And what happened? Did they whinge and whine and moan and groan? maybe at home to their partners and friends, but certainly not at work. My colleagues rolled up their sleeves, as I'm sure yours did out there in cyber world at your universities, and worked with their schools and our small learning design team to ensure that our students, wherever possible, continue to progress in their courses. In fact, we very early in the picture defined the principles on which our all online learning and teaching strategy would be based. And number one was continue to engage our students and where at all possible, ensure that they keep progressing, especially our students heading towards the end of their degrees, so we could get those allied health and nursing, especially teaching students out there into the industries that needed them so much. And not only did our staff survive, they thrived. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the efforts of those CQU colleagues who pulled together, even more than usual, to get on with their job, our job as educators. And even during a crushing restructure where we lost many long-term colleagues to voluntary enforced redundancies, our educators, professional staff colleagues, and continued to put our students first, put aside what they were feeling to keep putting our students first. So much so that in our Term 1 student and teaching evaluation data has just been released and is being analysed as we speak. And I'm so amazed and proud, well, probably not amazed, but so proud to let you know that during COVID, this was Term 1, 2 weeks of normality, the rest of the term was a bit crazy, assessments, exams, I'll talk about them in a minute. Our students rated their experience at our university in Term 1 as 4.4 from 5. So actually a slight increase on 2019. So absolutely unbelievable and irrefutable evidence that our people went above and beyond. Also some irrefutable evidence, I think, of the resilience of our student body. I find that absolutely outstanding, that score, but entirely justified, reinforcing my long-held belief in the quality of my CQU educated colleagues, and I couldn't be more proud. So in a year of lowlights, and there were many, what were my learning and teaching highlights? And I look at this unashamedly, probably not as the leader of the tertiary education division at Central Queensland University, but probably more as an educator, as an old school teacher. Number one, these are the highlights, our educators, my higher education and vet teachers who really did go above and beyond. When they were struggling, and we can chuckle about it now, and I guess we chuckled about it then, the many Zoom meetings, the Zoom classes where, like in typical YouTube fashion, the little toddler comes in, "Ma, I want to go to the toilet, can I have a sandwich, can I have a drink?" Absolutely hilarious, but it provided a nice sort of break in some of the more pressing conversations that were happening. But those educators, many of whom had to work from home or chose to work from home, when we met at the beginning of on Monday the 23rd of March, when that was the first day of all online, I asked the deans to commit to a phone call, at least one phone call, to every single member of our 30,000 student body, every single one. Deans went away, divided up the task. We're ably supported by a wonderful student services, student experience directorate at CQU as well. But our educators phoned every single student. Now, this wasn't about, do you know you have an assessment piece due for COIT 11667? I hope, Michael, that's not an actual unit in your school. But this was about, how you going? We're now all online. Did you get the memo? This is where you can get support. This is the way you're going to deliver our, here's whatever. So just absolutely fantastic. And our students loved the fact that we cared enough about them to call them. Some of our schools actually wrote, I saw an absolutely brilliant one just last week from the School of Business and Law, which was basically like a COVID survival guide. It was called a survival guide for isolated students. And it was convened. It was put together by academics, but it was actually all written by students. So it was student reflections on how to cope during isolation. Absolutely brilliant. This is as well as doing their normal study and doing their normal teaching, and just all the sharing of hints and tips across the university and across the sectors of teaching, basically, so that, as I said, we didn't just survive, that we could thrive. The other thing I'd like to mention, because there was a lot of discussion at the, especially in the higher ed sector at that time, about, oh my gosh, our students are all going to fail and hate us, so we'll have to change all our due dates, we'll have to change all our assessment, we'll have to change our grade system, we'll have to change it all to pass-fail. And we sat down, Celeste nodding because she was in the group, we sat down as a group of senior leaders in TED, and I said, you know what, I don't want to do this. And not one person wanted to do this. I said, we can teach our students well, we haven't given them any time off, we aren't changing anything except we're tweaking some assessments, especially exams. We're really keeping the teaching quality high, we're keeping the support services going, our academic learning centres in overdrive. Why would we risk disadvantaging potentially one particular sector of the student body? So we went ahead in that fashion. The only change that we made, and I'm still really invested in this and we will continue to do this, is that we relaxed the justification, if you like, to get an assignment extension. So if you mentioned COVID in your covering justification, then you received an assignment extension. So, and we didn't have malingerers. I didn't get reports of hundreds and thousands of students who were late and in the end failed. Students just needed that bit of extra time, a bit of extra support. So I better hurry up because that was a long description of a highlight as being our educators. I've talked about our students. Look, honestly, I love the CPU cohort. It's massive, it's varied, it's all different shades, it's all different backgrounds, it's all different levels of ability and capability. But they're amazing, and they did show their adaptability and their resilience, and a lot of them showed their kids wandering around in the back of Zoom meetings, which was great to know that everyone was just normal. Another highlight is the role of learning designers. I have spent a good part of the last 2 years trying to convince anyone at any level at this university of the importance of learning designers and educational developers. And I have to say, our learning design team, pretty tiny, was absolutely vital in our switch to online and then the professional development, etc., that we've had since, as well as doing their day jobs. They are patient, informed, and their collaborative work with our educators was nothing short of stunning. Nothing was too much trouble. Nowhere was too far back in a sort of development phase to start. Very respectful and just amazing. I was also just blown away by the level of innovation. And I'm a little bit old school I know you find that hard to believe, in terms of learning and teaching and quality learning and teaching. I've sometimes questioned why we have residential schools. I've always questioned why we have exams. I sort of know why we have laboratory sessions. I do know why they're important. But what actually happened in the very first thing that I actually saw was on Twitter, and then I contacted and had a chat to the teams. I think it was our podiatry team. I saw a photo of podiatry completely face-to-face, not all online. And in the first week, they had a working bee, COVID safe, obviously, where they packaged up boxes of resources and sent them out to the students. And then the students using the resources, I imagine they were cutting their own or a friend's toenails and doing all that sort of work. We use Zoom. The colleagues use Zoom to actually ensure that the teaching progress. So just exams, look, honestly, I'd like to ban exams. I know we need some of them, but we've had an amazing response by really traditional areas at the universities, oh no, you need an exam for these reasons. Well, guess what? We couldn't have an exam. I called exams putting students together in rooms with people with sticks. I know it's not like that. They're invigilators and they're really important, but we have reduced, by this time next year, I think we'll probably have reduced our formal invigilated face-to-face exams by about 60 or 70%. So pretty awesome. No risk to the quality, no risk to the integrity of that course. And just FYI, some of the accreditation bodies are going, oh, you can probably do that. So innovation has been absolutely fantastic. I think the other thing that's been a highlight, and exams, etc., is one of those, is the actual willingness of some of us crusty old people to let go of long-held and, quite frankly, out-of-date notions of learning and teaching. And I think that especially applies to how we assess our students. I mentioned accreditation bodies, and that's my last highlight, and not all of them, but some of our accreditation bodies have been amazing and have been what they would have probably called relaxed some of their requirements. What I want to do, and we're going to do this at the DVCA at the sort of that level in Universities Australia, is actually try to keep working with our accreditation bodies to say, hey, if it was okay in COVID to stop doing that and to do it this way, have a look at our students. There's no different in their capacity as professionals as they graduate. So why can't we keep doing that? So we will push forward. Even during a global pandemic where workforces in unis were shrinking, our educators, you and yours and mine, were delivering high quality, engaging teaching, commendable levels of scholarship, and yet they were still looking out for each other. And I think that's one of the areas. I think CQ's always had a fairly collaborative, empathetic workforce, but I think as we go forward, it will be even more important to make sure that we have those skills and we do that and we keep an eye on each other. So, and I'm winding up, you'll be pleased to know. So how do we take advantage of the collaborative and innovative culture that was certainly already present, but undoubtedly heightened due to COVID in our universities? So in other words, and in conclusion, where to from here? The negative effects of coronavirus will be experienced for some time. That's a given. It will take years for the financial impact across the world, not just in our universities, to remediate fully. And the sector will no doubt and sadly lose a significant number of talented academics. However, if I'm to be true to that Pollyanna reputation, I can't help but look to the future in a positive way, as long as we learn the lessons of 2020 and take them into our future. So some of the lessons learned and what I think we need to do going forward. Vote 1 for investment in relevant and worthwhile professional development for our educators. Make sure that our teachers at all sectors are at the cutting edge, but more importantly, that they feel comfortable and enabled and have the agency to really take learning and teaching forward into the future, even if it's not in their past. So point number 2, we need to invest in and value the folk who can provide this professional development. It's okay to say, that's fantastic, off we go, but our university has made a conscious and considered decision, because we can't travel at the moment, that we will focus on internal provision of professional development. And I say, Kate, Celeste, Michael, Cherie, everybody in learning, design and innovation and academic board, we need to rise up and advise our universities just what professional development we require and make sure that it's delivered. Point number 3 is we need to continue to value our educators and invest in their capacity. So see points 1 and 2 above. It's really important that we not just look for the outputs and the KPIs and the measures and the goal achievement. We need to be able to say, how's the best way to get a person to be able to deliver those KPIs? And then we need to take control of actually providing an environment financial, PD and otherwise, so that our educators can achieve. We need to recognise and reward exemplary learning and teaching practice. So I love the fact that we can shout from the rooftops when our educators even nominate for some of these external awards that happen, because that's the first step in a really busy time. And one of the things that Kate has done, and Celeste has no doubt had a finger in this pie, and Michael's nodding because I know he's part of it, is pull together educators who are selfless and generous and mentor their colleagues coming through. So rather than saying, oh, I've got the citation or I've got the award and I'm not going to tell anyone how to do that, let's open that up and say, well, this is what worked for me, and let's see if we can get our more of our educators acknowledged. Point number, if you're counting, 5, we need to create and nurture a learning and teaching culture where educators are empowered and equipped with the skills and knowledge to design and deliver an exceptional student experience. So see points 1, 2, 3 and 4 above. Keep making sure that when we celebrate, we don't just celebrate great engagement or openings of buildings or great research outcomes. We keep talking about exceptional learning and teaching. And finally, we need to value, acknowledge and reward the scholarship of learning and teaching, and ensure that our educators at all levels are provided with opportunities to share best practice. For me, scholarship doesn't end when you have researched or you have designed or you have delivered something high quality in the area of learning and teaching. No, it doesn't end. Well, it never ends, but certainly the loop's not closed until you share that practice and allow other people to benefit from the work that you have done. Just as you're about to do for the next couple of days, what you're going to do, I hope, in this conference, well, I know in this conference, is to talk about, to discuss, to debate, to question and acknowledge the great learning and teaching practice in all its guises across many, many institutions. And it sounds like institutions both within and beyond Australia. So I think that will be fantastic. So in conclusion, thank you, every single one of you online, on screen today, for your interest in and engagement with our 2020 Scholarship of Tertiary Teaching Conference. With the quality of the agenda, I know that you'll have an absolutely terrific 2 days learning with and from each other. With your enthusiasm, engagement and damn hard work, I'm confident that the tertiary sector in Australia will not just survive this year especially, but will thrive well into the future. Thank you so much and all the very best. Have a great conference. Oh, I feel like the Queen. I didn't mean to do that. I'll go like that. Thanks everybody. I think I have to go on mute and then Cherie will probably direct us, but I think you have now a virtual networking tea room. I'm actually sneaking off. My boss is going to be walking in the door any minute now. We've got a couple of meetings here. I'm in Bundy today, but just have an absolutely brilliant time. Thanks again.